Well, I'm Shane Schultz, and this is the Arisen Strength Motivational Podcast. Folks, we do this show because we feel there are far too many dreams, talents, and capabilities that are being suppressed for whatever reason. Whether it be injury, illness, or life experiences, these are all situations that have us be robbed of what it is that makes us special and unique in this world, and that's our passions. Here at Arisen Strength, we encourage people to pursue their passions in spite of the challenges they face. Now, how we do that is with our three-pillar concept. Number one, we support. Number two, we empower. And after all that work, number three, we have the right to celebrate. Folks, that's the Arisen Strength concept. Our goal is to help you be more than the challenges you face. So let's get to it. Let me go ahead and get right to the interview here with my good friend, Seth Rotberg. Hey, Seth, how you doing today?
I'm good. Can't complain. How's everything going with you, Shane?
I am doing really, really well. I appreciate it. We had a chance to talk about you and the efforts that you are making in regards to an illness that some people may not even know about. I'm sure that there's quite a few people who watch the TV series House, and they might have heard of it. It's called Huntington's disease. So tell me a little bit about what Huntington's disease is and how it is that you ended up having it into your daily routine.
Huntington's disease is a rare neurological and genetic disease that slowly deteriorates a person's physical and cognitive abilities. People think of the disease as a combination of ALS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's all at once. Currently, there's no cure that can, either cure it or slow it down. And I think the challenge with the disease is that once a person starts showing symptoms, the average lifespan is 10 to 20 years. I was involved with Huntington's disease because my mom battled the disease for 17 years before passing away about 3 years ago. To kind of describe more of the details of the disease, she often had poor balance and wobbly movements, often tripping and falling over. We had neighbors who saw her differently. They thought she might have been drinking during the day because of these movements. They were concerned for her. And then on top of that, there were these severe mood swings, sort of like having bipolar disorder. One moment, her and I are talking, everything's fine. The next, she's yelling at me, she's angry, or she's just very depressed. And unfortunately, she was misdiagnosed for quite some time with either just having bipolar and major depression, but those just happen to be symptoms of Huntington's disease. And when I was 15 years old and we got the official diagnosis, that's when my family and I realized that my mom had this disease. We, of course, looked more into and realized it's a genetic disease and that I'm at risk and I have a 50-50 chance of inheriting it, ending up like my mom one day.
Wow. Okay. Well, you said a whole lot there. So let's backtrack a little bit. First of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your mom. Never prepare for it to happen, even though that you might have expected it to happen. You mentioned that there were three illnesses that formulated Huntington's disease. Go over those three again. What were they?
So it's like a combination of ALS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's all into one disease. It's tough because when you have a parent or even a loved one who is impacted by this disease, there's really nothing you can do about it besides just watching them slowly get worse and worse. It really isn't just an individual diagnosis, but a family diagnosis because it does have an impact on everyone in the family, on how you can cope with the disease. But more importantly, what I realized that I lost out of that a lot of my friends had growing up was that feeling of normalcy and living a normal life like most teenagers, young adults should be doing.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. ALS, I know a little bit about that. I'm a Yankee fan. So Lou Gehrig's disease is something that has taken down some champions of the world, including your mom. So, this is something that a lot of people put their hands up in the air and they have no idea what the heck to do about it. And then to put Parkinson's and Alzheimer's involved, that's something that's pretty impacting, I'm sure. How old were you when you realized that your mom was diagnosed?
I was 15. We definitely know she had it, longer than that just because of the symptoms and realizing it's a genetic disease and that all those years of being misdiagnosed were really years of her showing symptoms of Huntington's disease.
Like you had mentioned, it obviously impacts the family near as much as what it does the individual. With that being the case, was it a different type of family atmosphere for you, especially within your home, because of what it is that your mom was going through? I mean, do you have brothers and sisters? Are you our only child, or how's that go?
I have an older sister. She's 3 years and 3 months older. When my mom was officially diagnosed with the disease, she was off to college in Arizona. So it was mainly just my dad and I who had to deal with a lot of, behind the scenes work or just the day-to-day living with her. And, the disease strips someone of their independency. So what that meant was I had to take on additional responsibility that, I looked at my friends and realized they didn't have to do this and take care of their parent. And for me, it was challenging. I mean, what 15-year-old wants to not only take on additional responsibility, but then try to rely on a parent that's no longer reliable, and you kind of reverse roles where as a child, as a teenager, you're the one taking care of your parent instead of them taking care of you. And it definitely caused a lot of stress in my life, especially those earlier days, because I didn't know how to deal with it and I didn't want to accept it. It was something that was very difficult coping with because no one truly understood what I was going through every day. My friends had their own problems that they had to deal with. I felt isolated. And so I tried to avoid it for a few years where I would try to stay at my friends' houses just to get away when it got too stressful at home. I really just didn't do as much as, looking back now that I should have done when living with a parent, because again, it was that idea and that mindset of why is this happening to me? And, why should I have to deal with this when I should be dealing with school and sports and everything else that a typical teenager should be dealing with at the time?
Yeah. Well, I would think that that's pretty average for somebody who might be into that type of situation as you were. Now, of course, with Alzheimer's and with Parkinson's, I actually had what amounted to a stroke in 2012. And as a result, I ended up being almost diagnosed with Parkinson's. They thought I had Parkinson's disease. They thought it was dormant within me at the time. So I know a little bit about what the symptoms are because I was experiencing them firsthand where, my legs were tremoring, my voice was stuttering. I was definitely not cognitively all there compared to what it is that I might be today, although some people might, disagree with that. Okay, so did your mom know what was going on in her Huntington's, or was this something as to where you constantly had to go through it with her realizing it all new again each day that went by?
I mean, at first, prior to her being officially diagnosed, of course, none of us knew what was going on, which was always frightening because when there's no official diagnosis, you don't know what those next steps are. It's kind of living with that unknown. When my mom officially got diagnosed, I still think to this day that she couldn't accept it at first because, it's a disease without a cure and with a very little treatment. And so why should someone try to accept something that is eventually going to take their life away? And not only take it away, like slowly take someone away, as I mentioned. I mean, it was 17 years, but, the average lifespan after could be 10 to 20 years once starting to show symptoms. And so it slowly progresses and makes someone worse and worse to the point where they can't do anything physically, mentally until the end. So it was definitely challenging for my mom to kind of accept that again and realize that she was just going to continue to get worse and worse. But what amazed me was the last few years when she was in a nursing home, she always had, her sense of humor still. She was still inspiring and always had a smile on her face. But the most memorable part that I will never forget was that she just kind of took life a day at a time and didn't let the disease win. Even though she passed away from it, I still will say that she defeated the disease because she never gave up hope and she continued to fight back.
That's pretty empowering to think that somebody could be going through what it is that she obviously was going through. And it's funny how you mentioned that she still had her humor. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. It was her humor that kept us going. It was, when we would visit, we would see somebody who wasn't the same person that we remembered. But at the same time, she would have her humor. And one thing that she used to do, singing. all the time singing. If you started a song, then she would finish that song. So, I mean, it was like she knew songs that we did not know that she knew. I mean, it's like she just all of a sudden started belting it out. It's like, I'm not saying something like Twisted Sister or anything like that, but,
Yeah.
it's like, you go, Jeremiah was a bullfrog, and then all of a sudden she go, was a good friend of mine. I mean? And she would just continue.
Yeah.
And numbers, she knew. She was an accountant, so it's obvious as to why. But like she knew, like if you said, okay, what's your date of birth? What's your social security number? She got ba, 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 ba. And it was like, there was nothing wrong with her. But obviously throughout the day, there were other things that obviously was getting worse. And even at her worst, she loved to sing and she loved to laugh. So did you have those moments as well while your mom was in the nursing home or even before the nursing home?
What the challenge was for me, especially after she passed, everyone said, well, just remember the memories you had with her and of her. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was just my mind or my brain purposely doing it, but I only remember her with the disease. And so I, of course, do have good memories, but of course I also have bad memories, unfortunately. And when she was in a nursing home, I think those good memories were more of when she wanted to watch Family Feud and kind of us trying to work together to answer all the questions. Her favorite show was SVU, which I feel like I only watched whenever I went to go visit her. And then even when we go watch it, she was like, well, I already saw this one. I was like, well, I haven't. She's like, well, too bad type thing. And so there's definitely, those jokes here and there. And even when we go out to eat, just her being jokingly all the time and being in good spirits was my constant reminder that, hey, you know what, if she can do it, so can I.
Wow. Folks, we're talking with Seth Rotberg, who brings health advocacy to the disease, Huntington's disease. And when we come back, we're actually going to be talking about Seth and Huntington's disease. We'll be right back. And we are back here on the Arisen Strength Motivational Podcast. I'm here with Seth Rotberg, who brings health advocacy to Huntington's disease. And Seth, I kind of led people to know that you talked about this being a genetic disease or possibly being a genetic disease. So tell me, when was it that you found out that you had Huntington's disease?
I was 15 when I first found out about it. Very similar to many people taking a biology class. I did one of those Punnett squares, which I don't know if a lot of people remember it, but you kind of mark it up based on your, dominant and recessive genes. And my thought process was, since my dad's a dominant gene, I won't be at risk. Well, it turns out I was a freshman in college and I started doing more research. I realized that's not how it works and that I am at risk and I may end up having the disease one day. But I realized that freshman year I wasn't ready. I think I was just overanalyzing everything. I would trip and fall over, or I would forget something, and I would immediately blame the HD. But I just wasn't ready to go through that testing process because of the impact it will have, no matter if I test positive or negative, and how it will impact my future. But the following year, I kept thinking about it. I didn't want to live with the unknown. I wanted to plan my future out because I'm a planner. I need to know what my future holds and how I'm going to, deal with it. So my sophomore year, when I was 20 years old, I decided to go through the testing process. I didn't go through it how most people should, which is going through a genetic counselor and someone who specializes in that specific disease, whether it's Huntington's disease or another genetic disease. I found out from the neurologist that I tested positive. And at that point in my life, I realized I had two options. Option one is to let the disease dictate my life and not really do anything about it, put it in the back burner. And option two was to use my results as motivation to fight back through fundraising and advocacy efforts to get one step closer to a cure. And luckily, I chose that second option and haven't looked back since.
That's one of the things that I really like about you when I first had the opportunity to be able to talk with you. I realized that we had some things in common for sure. And motivation, personal development is definitely one of those things. In fact, I saw you did a TEDx talk in regards to your experience with Huntington's disease. What was that like?
It was an unbelievable experience because not only did I have the opportunity to do a TEDx talk, but it actually took place in my hometown at the high school that I used to go to. And the theme of that TEDx event was inspire others. In my head, I thought, I think I can do this. Let me give it a try. And I originally went in with the idea of finding your passion, finding your purpose. But then it turned more into the genetic testing aspect, the stigma behind it, but more importantly, how to continue to fight back, feel empowered, and not give up hope when dealing with a challenging circumstance in life.
Boy, I can't say it any better there. You had mentioned the fact that I think I can do this.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that we've had a number of people who have done TEDx talks here on Arisen Strength Motivational Podcast, which I'm very honored to have those opportunities. So I believe you're number 5. So very much in high standard as our guest here. Some people who I call very dear friends had the opportunity in order to be able to do TEDx talks. And I know for a fact that they are not just, like writing a book report or writing a speech, and then you go up on the circle and then you just start talking to the audience. It's a pretty grueling process, isn't it?
That's an easy way of saying it, but it is definitely challenging. I would never have thought I would be sharing my story in front of 800 people live, memorized without any scripts, realizing if I can do that, anyone else can. It's just about channeling those messages and broadening those messages. So it's not just about Huntington's disease or my personal story, but making sure the audience you speak with can relate and that they can understand and kind of put themselves in your shoes and realize, oh, wow, this is crazy that he went through this or this person went through it. Maybe there's a way now that I can follow my own journey and get to where I want to be in life.
Yeah, and you really did it well. When I had the opportunity in order to be able to watch it on YouTube, I watched it a couple times, and you definitely had some control over what it is that you were saying, and you were able to get people to identify with what it is that you were talking about. Now, going back to the fact that you've been now diagnosed with Huntington's disease, when you decided that you wanted to now take this to another level. You wanted to bring fundraising to the aspect. You wanted to bring motivation to what it is that you do in life. And you want to make an inspiration to what it is that you're trying to have happen as a result of you receiving your diagnosis. I mean, this show is all about inspiration through awareness and motivation. So I can't think of a better reason why to have you on Arisen Strength. But when you made that choice, how difficult was it to carry that choice, to keep that choice fully in your mind and in the front where you needed it to be in order to be able to be fulfilled and be successful in doing that?
I think one of the toughest things was once finding out that result, there's no turning back. For me, I already knew I had it. This was just more of confirmation. But in reality, it doesn't really hit a person until someone actually tells you that this is real life. There's no thinking you may or may not have it. You definitely have it. But more importantly, I only told a few friends when I first learned, and it took me a few years just to tell my dad and my sister because I was just trying to protect them and not have them worry about me, in addition to not wanting my mom to find out because she was already dealing with it. She was already suffering. I didn't want her to have to think about me and feel guilty that she passed this on. I didn't want my dad to feel more stressed, and I didn't want to put pressure on my older sister. So it took a few years to feel more comfortable and realize this is part of my life. I need the support from not just my friends, but my family too. And eventually I opened up to them and I shared it with them. But when I was doing this fundraising and advocacy work for those couple of years, a lot of people were like, oh, that's great. You're doing it for your mom. But deep down inside, I knew I was also doing this for myself and my friends who are impacted by the disease, whether they're at risk or they tested positive, tested negative, or even a caregiver. And I just wanted to keep pushing because those are the people that inspire me every day. Now it's more about not just raising awareness about Huntington's disease, but about rare diseases in general and the impact it has on a young person who's trying to cope with it. because ultimately it really doesn't matter which disease it is. We're all going through that same battle. You know, we have to continue to try to feel normal. We're living that double-edged sword in a way where you're trying to live normal. You're also trying to keep something a secret. You're trying to be comfortable with it. You feel isolated. You feel like no one understands. And then you meet that other young adult or young person who has gone through a similar experience. And you're like, oh, wow, I don't have to explain anything to you. You get it. I get it. This makes me feel so much better and make me realize I'm not alone in this fight. And that's kind of why I want to continue to advocate is for these younger people to make sure they're provided those proper resources and support when trying to cope with a disease or trying to figure out, okay, well, what are my next steps in life and how can I give back? How can I get more involved with fundraising or advocacy efforts in my own community?
Yeah, there's a definite reason why you're here on this show because, you know, like I said, there's the pillars and foundations of Arisen Strength. Obviously, there's support, empower, and celebrate, because after all that work, we have the right to celebrate, right? Then we also have our foundations. And our foundations are, number one, take ownership. Folks, I think he proved he took ownership of what it is that he was doing in regards to his recovery. Number two is the power of turning the thought. Okay, well, I think you did that when you decided that you were going to now try to inspire others in order to be able to raise awareness and funds for what it is that you're talking about, not only for Huntington's disease, but like you said, for rare diseases in general. And number three is the freedom of acceptance. That's the one that I want to hear from you because I haven't heard it yet. When you found out that you had Huntington's, you said that you kind of hid it. You didn't tell many people. You didn't even tell your family for what you said, 3 years. So this is something that people need to hear. Was it easier for you to hold on to it, or was it easier for you to tell somebody?
That's a great question. And here's the deal is I knew I needed to tell someone, which is why I told my friends. But even going to, that first year, going to a national Huntington's disease convention and meeting people, the first thing they say is, oh, who in your family has it? The second question, oh, have you tested? And I kept getting that over and over again. And I didn't obviously feel comfortable yet letting them know that, yes, I've also tested. So part of me wanted to be like, you know what, that's none of your business. The other part of me is like, you know what, I don't feel comfortable yet. So I'm just going to say, you know what, I don't want to do it. I'm not ready, or my focus is on my mom's health. But I realized the importance of accepting it is a big one. And once I told my dad and my sister and some of my extended family, I felt more comfortable and I felt like I was myself again. I didn't have to hide this secret and I could finally be more open about it. And so today when I tell people about it, I say, listen, yeah, my mom passed away and yes, I tested positive for it, but it's not changing who I am. You don't have to treat me differently either. And of course, there are people who don't understand it still, and that's fine. But then there's others who are, some of my closest friends who still treat me like Seth. They don't see me for the disease. They see me for who I am as a person. And I think that's not an easy thing to accept because there are people that you think are your closest friends that may still not understand. And you know what? Maybe they're just not worth being part of your everyday life. But I think if you're able to accept it, you're going to feel more empowered to fight back. You're going to feel more inspired. But more importantly, it doesn't just happen overnight. You need to surround yourself with those loved ones, friends and family, services, resources, anything that you think is going to help you when you want to eventually open up more about it and be able to cope with it, because you're not going to just wake up one day and be like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. I didn't wake up one day and say, yeah, I'm good to go. I'm open about this. It took me some time. And even at the age of 27 now, it's still challenging at times to tell people about it because it's not something that I want to be looked at by Huntington's disease, but by Seth. And so that's more focused on, when it comes to romantic relationships and when to talk to them about it. And that's a whole nother subject. But I think it is important to remind yourself to live life that one day at a time mindset, to understand the importance of these resources that are out there that could be provided to you, and not to be afraid to just ask for support or help when you need it. I mean, we all have our tough days, and sometimes we don't feel comfortable reaching out. We want to be strong for others, but it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to accept it that you are having a tough day or tough week, and just telling someone when they say, how are you doing? You say, you know what, actually, I'm not doing okay. And I just want to talk. And I think that's something that I've learned over the years as well. Is it's okay to, be honest with people and just say, hey, actually, can we talk? I'm just struggling. I just need to vent, or I just want to hear your perspective on it.
Folks, we're talking with a good friend of mine, Seth Rotberg. He is bringing health advocacy not only to Huntington's disease, but also rare disease in general. We'll be right back, and we're going to be talking with Seth and seeing what it is that he has planned in the near future. We'll be right back. And we are back here with Seth Rotberg, who is bringing awareness to not only Huntington's disease, but rare diseases in general. That happens a lot because, as you know, Seth, I do a morning show called Motivated Strength. I often am saying I may not have the exact illness that you have. I may not have the title, and I may not even have the symptoms. But I do know the mindset of what it's like to feel you're being dictated by your illness. I do know the mindset as to where you think that you're overwhelmed or where you feel overwhelmed. Is that why you decided to take on rare diseases in general as well as Huntington's?
I think actually it kind of hit me after doing this TEDx talk, which only happened at the beginning of January, when I realized the message was a lot bigger than just Huntington's disease. Because in my mind, I just wanted to do this to raise awareness for Huntington's disease, being a young person impacted by it, a young person going through genetic testing. And then I realized it's bigger than that because of all these rare diseases and how there's, millions of people in the U.S. who are impacted by a rare disease. And of those, I can only imagine how many of them are young people who have to go through it. Again, whether they have one, they're at risk, they're a caregiver, and the difficulties. And so the plan was originally, let's try to raise some awareness for Huntington's disease. And now it's turning out to be, let's raise some awareness for rare diseases. Let's try to figure out those next steps. And more importantly, I'm a big person about collaboration. So how can we as individuals or as organizations continue to collaborate to work together to kind of unite that fight against rare diseases and to make sure that we are providing useful resources, programs, support all families, all young people who have to face the everyday struggles of living with a rare disease.
Yeah, it's funny because I've told Seth that he could not only be an ambassador of Arisen Strength, but he can be ambassador of the podcast network here, of the Speaking of the Heart Radio network, because it's all about restoring purpose and passion to those who need it most. And, when we started talking, we were saying the same thing. I mean, what you just said about rare disease, I deal with mostly mental health. I deal with clinical depression, borderline personality disorder, PTSD. I've dealt with addiction, codependency. It's a pretty big cocktail, right?
Yeah.
And then recently I ended up with chronic nerve pain. And even with it being pain, I still relate it to mental health. I still relate it to depression because of what that nerve pain has created for me. I decided when I came up with the idea of the podcast, which is Arisen Strength, the motivational podcast, I knew that I wanted to reach out to everybody. I wanted to reach out to everybody in regards to mental health, and I wanted to reach out to everybody in regards to medical health. And the same thing when it came to building the podcast network, which is the Speaking of the Heart Radio network, is to reach out to those who deal with chronic pain, chronic illness, mental illness, maybe life experiences you just can't understand and you can't let go because it doesn't seem fair. It really was my purpose in order to help others who are more like me than they are different. It's just that I related to more than what it is that might have thought of in the first place. Is that something that you kind of gelled with when it came to rare disease?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head where, you think it's one thing that you're helping to support, and then it ends up being a whole bunch of different ideas or a bunch of different people or organizations or causes that you're supporting. It just took me this one TEDx talk to really realize that was my passion, my purpose of not only helping others, but trying to inspire others to continue to keep hope alive when dealing with a challenging circumstance in life. Again, whether it is Huntington's disease related, a rare disease, or just another difficult circumstance that you're dealing with, the importance of reaching out to people when you need that support or finding those services that are going to help you be okay the next day are very valuable. And sometimes we don't realize how important those are until we actually need them.
Yeah, it's like hope is true. I'm going to give a shout out to my good friends, Ken and Barbie of the International Pain Foundation. They actually have a song that they were a big part of the production of. Hope is true. And it's a tremendous song. So have you heard it yet?
I have not. Please send it my way after we talk.
I definitely will. It's something that I think that you'll really enjoy. Okay, so we've come to the end of our time for today anyways. That doesn't mean that we can't have Seth back again and again and again. So tell me, what is it that you have planned in the near future? What are some things that you've got going? I know that you're talking about fundraising. I know that you're talking about bringing awareness to rare diseases. What are some things that you have coming up in the near future?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually am finishing up graduate school, getting a master's in nonprofit management. So that's actually happening right around the corner.
Wow.
And then it's just, that's awesome. I know. It's, I appreciate it. And it's an exciting part of my life of just figuring out, okay, well, what are the next steps in my career? And I think that's where I'm currently at is, of course, I still am involved with Huntington's disease. I currently sit on a board for an international nonprofit called the Huntington's Disease Youth Organization, or as the young people call it, HDYO, HDO. Its mission is to provide support and resources to young people around the world who are impacted by Huntington's disease. And again, I say impacted because it may not mean that they have it. They could, again, be at risk. They could have tested positive or negative or be a caregiver. So I like to use impacted instead of affected because a lot of times when you say, yeah, I'm affected by this, it means that you actually have it versus being like impacted differently. So I sit on their board. I do a lot of work with them, but ultimately just trying to figure out those next steps in my life, working in the rare disease community, whether it is as a patient advocate for an organization or working on programs to continue to provide those resources I mentioned before for these young adults or young people in the community. Because what I realize is that it's not, there isn't year-round services for young people. There could be Facebook online support groups. There could be conferences or camps or retreats that people go to and they get all excited. They meet people. But then what happens after that month or two after getting back home? You just kind of go back to the everyday life. So let's take it to that next level and make sure that there is more of that social, emotional, and educational support year round to continue inspiring young people to fight back, to, as you love it, to feel empowered and engaged through fundraising and advocacy. I mean, it's not like you have to go out and put on a $30,000 fundraiser. Maybe it's you just sharing your story or telling one new person about your own personal rare disease. I mean, these are little things that anyone can do to make a difference. Even if you don't see it as a big difference, all the little pieces always add up at the end of the day.
Awesome. I can't say it any better. So where can people find you? I know that you said that you like to collaborate with different efforts that are out there in regards to rare diseases and things that are going on. So where can people find you to do that?
Well, Shane, I am on LinkedIn. If people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just send me a message when they, click connect saying that they would love to collaborate or just learn more, or maybe I can learn more from them, just by searching my name. The other thing I am slowly working on, and I realize it's more of a process, is creating at least a website where people can connect with me. And as soon as that is available, I'll make sure to pass that along to you, Shane, and make sure people can get in touch with me through that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also on the website with the Speaking of the Heart Radio Network, we have an affiliate page, an Amazon affiliate page, folks, that is out there for resources for you to enjoy, for you to take and be able to help you be more than the challenges that you face, and have a tremendous amount of authors that are on there, some that are on our network and some that are advocates just like Seth here. Seth, is there a book that you would recommend for us to be able to put onto our advocacy page?
I mean, there's definitely several books that I would recommend. I mean, it really depends on, I guess, what type of book. I mean, off the top of my head, just thinking of some books that I'm looking at is, Man's Search for Meaning, Being with the Dying, which is like underneath it says cultivating compassion and fearlessness in the presence of death. So just kind of the understanding of meaning, purpose, realizing, that life is too short sometimes. Don't look back in life and saying, I should have done this. I wish I did this, but live in the moment. Do it now.
We are going to end it on that little note there because it's perfect for what it is that we're talking about here today. Folks, I'm talking with Seth Rotberg. He brings awareness to not only Huntington's disease, but also rare diseases in general. He is obviously somebody who is on the uprise. He's rising up to talk about these things and what it feels like to be able to deal with these things that he's dealt with in his own life. Also, his family has dealt with Huntington's disease as well as he has. You know, we can't cover every single thing that Seth has experienced having a rare disease, but that doesn't mean that we can't have him come back to talk with us.
Absolutely. I'm excited already about, the next time I can be on the show and, maybe share some new insights.
Sounds great. Sounds great. All right. So folks, we are going to wrap it up. And remember, you are the one that can reach outside of what it is that you're ailed by. Arisen Strength, the Motivational Podcast, is all about inspiration through awareness and motivation. That means we need to hear your stories. So if you want to tell us your story, make sure to get with us so that we can get with you, just like we did with Seth here, and be able to get your story out there to be able to be a difference for not only yourself, but also for others. Hope you all have a great night, and we'll talk to you again soon.